AlphaTheta are best known for their pricey high-end kits, but for a long time they've had a foothold in the beginner market too. Welcome to Beatsource Tech, my name is Mojaxx, and today we're looking at the company's new entry-level controller, the DDJ-FLX2, which, as the name implies, is their most flexible budget offering to date. It has been a busy few weeks for AlphaTheta. First we saw the DJcity wireless headphones with Sonic Link, then the DDJ Groove 6, a mid-range controller. That was followed by the XDJ-AZ, the new flagship club-style all-in-one, which cost over $3,000. And now we have a product which is much more affordable, cheaper even than the headphones, the DDJ-FLX2, which has a street price of around $179 in the US. That's a very competitive price indeed, and puts it in the same bracket as the Mixtrack Pro FX and Party Mix Live from Numark, and the DJ Control Impulse 300 from Hercules, all of which work with Algoriddim's DJ Pro and Serato, but with the Flex 2 you also get AlphaTheta's own Rekordbox as well. The Flex 2 is effectively the successor to the DDJ-200, which I never reviewed on this channel, mainly because I try and avoid reviewing gear which I'm not really into. And the 200, whilst interesting, had one big flaw in my eyes: it didn't feature any kind of audio outputs. Instead, it just worked as a control surface connected via Bluetooth, whilst your laptop or mobile device took care of the audio. That's not a terrible idea in principle, but for me, I felt that it just wasn't flexible enough. The DDJ-FLX2 still has that as an option, and it will be your only choice when using one particular setup, which I'll come back to, but this time it does also feature a pair of outputs, one for headphones and one for speakers or an amp. We might as well get into those outputs now. They both have stereo 3.5mm jack sockets. In general, I would prefer to see RCAs for the master output, but on a device like this, I'm not going to complain too much. Each one has a small knob next to it to control the level, which is a bit fiddly, but again, perfectly usable. It's worth pointing out that whilst all three supported platforms on computers will let you send the main output to your laptop speakers while still using the headphones on the Flex 2, that can't be done on iOS. So on there, you'll have to plug something into that master output jack to hear anything, unless you can live without pre-queuing tracks. The only other connection on the Flex 2 is a USB-C port for power, or connecting to your computer or mobile device. There's no second port which would allow you to pass power through to your phone or tablet, but no doubt you could use a hub or something if you wanted to play for a long time without using up your battery. The Flex 2 itself doesn't need much juice at all, only requiring 5 volts. The unit is very compact indeed, at around 38cm wide and 20cm deep. I'm showing it here alongside the company's DDJ-FLX4 for comparison, and that is a pretty small unit in itself. The Flex 2 will happily fit inside most backpacks or even shoulder bags. That compact size helps the Flex 2 to feel quite solidly built. Of course, it's all plastic at this price, but it doesn't have that hollow, flexible feel which some budget controllers do, and all the controls felt sturdy enough during my testing. As for the sound quality, it's neither outstanding or disappointing for the price you're paying. It would sound out of its depth on a big sound system, but in a bedroom scenario it will do the job perfectly well. One thing I will note, there are no level meters anywhere on the Flex 2, and nor are there any controls to scroll through your library and load tracks. On a device of this size though, there will always be some compromises as to which controls make the cut and those that don't, and I'd rather lose those than any performance features. So far, this is all fairly standard issue entry-level controller stuff. What sets the Flex 2 apart? Well, it supports quite a variety of applications out of the box. I'm assuming Virtual DJ will also have a mapping for it 5 minutes after release, as they always do, but as standard it works with Rekordbox on iOS and Android, Rekordbox on Mac and Windows, DJ Pro on iOS and Android, DJ Pro on Mac and Windows, and Serato DJ Lite on Mac and Windows, as well as Serato DJ Pro if you have a license for that. I'll quickly now break down the actual features on the Flex 2, then we'll discuss the other platforms. So I'm going to talk you through the functionality here on the Flex 2 only once, because it's generally the same with the 3 different platforms, with Rekordbox, Serato and with DJ Pro. There are a few quirks here and there with the different platforms, and things might sound a little different, but on the whole, yeah, they're generally the same. The mappings are pretty tight for each. We've got the cue and play pause buttons. Then we've got the pitch slider, which is pretty short, but you know, it's accurate enough. You can dial into like 1/10 of a BPM, no problem with that. Got a nice resistance to it, a little click at 0. All good there. The jog wheels themselves, yeah, I really like these actually, considering it's such a budget device and considering how small they are. They're weighted beautifully, like the resistance is spot on. They're not too free spinning, but at the same time you can, you know, scratch back and forth very comfortably. Capacitive tops on them, and that seems to be very responsive. And of course you can pitch bend with the side of them as well. So yeah, overall very happy with those jogs. In context, I think they're very, very good. We move on to the pads. So we've got hot cues. These are like clicky buttons, not spongy pads, but they work fine. Responsive. And we have different modes for those. So we hold shift and the beat sync button puts it into the pad mode selector. So I'm going to go to pad effects, and we can see on the screen now we have different effects. And we actually have 2 banks of them here in Rekordbox. We've got roll, sweep, flanger, break, echo, reverb, and release echo. And then yeah, we can go into the second one, slip loops, transforms, and release echoes again. And those, of course, they're basically a replacement for the beat effects. There's no separate beat effects section on here, so you're going to need these pad effects if you want to do things like an echo out. And so I'm always glad to see pad effects, but in the case of the Flex 2, I'm especially glad. Then we've got shift again, pad mode, loop mode. Again in Rekordbox, we can see on the screen. And then we've got sampler is the 4th mode. So yeah, plenty to do with those pads. And quick enough to switch between the different modes. The faders themselves, we've got fairly stiff up faders and a fairly loose crossfader. That's what you want, feels good. The sharpness of the cut is dependent on the software. This is just a controller. It's not a hardware mixer, you know, but yeah, all works fine on the different platforms. Then we've got the filter at the bottom. And in Rekordbox here, we can change that to a different thing. So we can choose like filter echo. Or we can choose space down. And there's more you can unlock as well, but yeah. The color effects knobs, all good. Low, mid and high EQs. The cutoff points, etc. will vary depending on what software you're using, but yeah, all good there. Cue wise, we've got 1, 2 and master. So I'm just listening to the master right now. Then we've got the smart fader. And this is one area where it does perform differently and sound differently with the different platforms, but all good there. I like the way that transitions. And then we also can change that in Rekordbox here to filter mix as well. Just another way of working with stuff. We hold shift and we can enable the color effects on or off, and we can also choose between them by holding shift and the effects select here in Rekordbox as well. And that's it in terms of the basic functionality. As I say, pretty much the same with all the platforms. It would be a problem if it wasn't, but overall, yeah, very happy considering just how compact this is. You're not going to get anything else on there, you know, like trim controls and stuff. That's the one thing I would say. If you're not a beginner, if you're coming to this as an experienced DJ, do take care, because you might have your natural inclination. Might be that this might be the low EQ because you see the 4 knobs and that you think those are gains. You know what I'm saying? You guys and girls out there who've been in this for a while, you know, that muscle memory. But yes, overall, yeah, nothing to complain about here.
So that's how the Flex 2 works with Rekordbox on iOS, specifically an iPad with USB-C. And that's also how it will work with recent iPhones that also have USB-C. Where things get a little more complicated is with older iOS devices which have a Lightning port instead. In that case, you can't connect via the USB-C port on the back of the Flex 2, even if you have the right cable. Instead, you have to connect via Bluetooth and use the audio output from the phone or iPad itself. To set that up, you plug a USB-C power cable into the controller and you link the Flex 2's Bluetooth to Rekordbox for control. And then to get separate audio outputs for headphones and the master out to go to external speakers, you will need a specific type of splitter cable. I have an old Griffin one from years ago and that worked. In connecting like that, you lose stereo output. Instead, the Q and master outs are summed to mono, one on each side of the phone or tablet's output. If that sounds complicated, that's because it kind of is. Bluetooth is not an especially low latency wireless protocol, so there is a bit of a lag between you moving controls and the software responding. And although it's not so much as to be really painful, the overall experience of playing like this just isn't as intuitive and smooth as using a wired connection. Also, this might be a limitation with the beta software I was using, but that Bluetooth connection method didn't work on my iPhone with DJ, so you're stuck with Rekordbox for better or worse. I'm guessing this is all power related. Unlike with USB-C, Lightning can't readily support enough power pass-through to run the Flex 2, and so to support that, AlphaTheta would need to add a second USB-C port, which would cost significantly more than building in a simple Bluetooth chip. And at a time when Apple are actively phasing out Lightning on all their devices, it might well be a waste of time for most users. Overall, I think as with the DDJ-200 before it, there are other options out there which do allow a hardwired connection to iOS devices with a Lightning port, including the DDJ-FLX2, and so if you aren't looking to upgrade your iPhone or iPad to a model with USB-C anytime soon, you'd be better off looking elsewhere. Coming back to DJ, running the Flex 2 in that software via USB-C on mobile and computers is a perfectly smooth experience. Whilst mobile Rekordbox is fine, Algoriddim have been in that game for over a decade and their platform is simply far more mature and feature-packed on phones and tablets. It also features a full suite of different streaming services which you can use, unlike Rekordbox on mobile which only supports 3, and for beginners who may not have a large collection of music already, that is a big deal. The other factor in DJ's favour is that the experience of using their software on mobile and on a computer is pretty similar. Mobile and desktop Rekordbox have a very different look, feel and feature set to each other, but with DJ going between the two doesn't feel at all jarring. Another thing to be aware of, if you upgrade to the Pro features on DJ, that applies for mobile and desktop, whereas if you do the same on Rekordbox, it will only unlock features in the mobile app. With both upgrades costing in the region of $50 a year, that makes Algoriddim's offering much better value. I'll quickly mention Rekordbox on desktop. There are no surprises with that, as there shouldn't be with the company's own software. The mapping does what it says it will, and the desktop application does have a ton more features than the mobile version, all of which can be utilised with the Flex 2, even if you might have to resort to your keyboard and trackpad to do so. Finally, we look at Serato DJ Lite, which is, to be frank, looking a bit tired by comparison with both other platforms on the Flex 2. The fact is that most kids, who will be a big part of the target audience for this controller, don't have a computer these days. They're far more likely to have a phone or a tablet. That probably applies to a lot of adults too, and Serato just aren't in that mobile space at all, which is starting to look like a bit of an oversight on their part. Functionally, Serato DJ Lite works fine with the Flex 2, but there are some areas where the other apps are better. For example, they insist on only allowing the top 4 pads on each deck to be used for anything useful, and so the bottom 4 pad effects aren't there, meaning you don't get any kind of echo out effect, which you do on DJ and Rekordbox. The limitations just seem a bit arbitrary in DJ Lite sometimes, and it does still annoy me that the software bugs you constantly to upgrade to the full Serato DJ Pro, which also works very well with the Flex 2, but that's a very expensive proposition, which will be beyond the budget and requirements of most beginners. I absolutely applaud AlphaTheta for making the DDJ-FLX2 compatible with so much software on so many different types of device. To be honest though, as with the DDJ-200, I'm still scratching my head a little at the Bluetooth connectivity aspect. Using it in that way simply isn't as good an experience as using the controller hardwired. In my opinion, having that option needlessly complicates a product which is otherwise incredibly simple to set up and use, even for complete novices. Which is the whole point of a controller like this. You shouldn't need to mess around with splitters and different configurations, and when hardwired with the Flex 2, you absolutely don't, whichever software platform you decide to use. So putting that Bluetooth aside, the DDJ-FLX2 is absolutely a solid recommend from me. It's very straightforward for a beginner to use, but it also won't cause them frustration by being too limited as their skills grow. And it's priced very competitively too. There is really no AlphaTheta price premium to be found here. In the comments, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the DDJ-FLX2, and also if you started your DJ journey using software,
Let us know which application that was with, and have you stuck with it since then, or have you moved on to something else? Thanks for watching this episode of Beatsource Tech. I do hope you've enjoyed it or found it useful. If you have, please give the video a thumbs up and make sure you're subscribed to the channel and that you've turned on notifications so you don't miss any future videos. I'll see you next time.